Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 7th meeting of the CEA Community Advisory Committee. Could we have the roll call, please?
Thank you. Member Daniels? Make sure your mic is on. Here. Member DeCino?
Here.
Member Jameson? Member Paul?
Yes, present.
Member Reed?
Present.
Member Lesazade?
Here.
Member Davenport?
Here.
Member Norris?
Present.
Member Kirschbaum? Member Shade?
Here.
Member Nagamini?
Here.
Member Ishii?
Here.
Member Oshley?
Here.
Vice Chair Mosier?
Here.
And Chair Warden. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, it's time for the flag salute. Right, join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yeah, aspirations, right?
Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda?
We have no public comments, but we do have a written comment that was received by Steve Linthicum. It is posted to the website and hereby made a part of the record.
All right, thank you. As you know, Chair Warden is not here. He's at another Sandag meeting and is expected to arrive in 30 to 45 minutes. So I'll be the interim chair. And I'm terming out as vice chair at the end of the year. So this will be my, I hope I'll be reappointed to the committee, but this will be my last time as vice chair. All right, item 1 on our agenda is the Chief Executive Officer update. And our Chief Executive Officer is still Barb Boswell. So.
Thank you, Chair, or Vice Chair. I do have a slide on this item. Just to highlight the items I'll be talking about. So you made reference that I'm still the Chief Executive Officer. We do have a new Chief Executive Officer, Greg Wade, and Greg's official start date will be February 1st, 2024. Very excited to have him join. He brings great experience in community choice energy in San Diego, having led the effort to implement Solana Energy Alliance, and is local. So we'll be looking forward to him joining, and then he will be participating in these meetings. In addition to the CEO, we have been busy with other staff recruitments. We have 2 new employees who will be starting on December the 18th. One of those is a key accounts program manager, and the other position starting on the 18th is our board secretary / administrative assistant. And then on January the 8th, we have 2 additional employees who will be beginning, and it will be a second key accounts program manager and and it says and program manager. That should say and regulatory analyst. And then we have another position, a 5th position that we have not yet identified a final candidate, but it's in process of recruitment, which is a power procurement manager. And that concludes my update, Vice Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or the committee may have.
Thank you, Barbara. Are there any questions for our CEO? All right, thank you. let's go on to item number 2, which is approval of final ad hoc subcommittee reports to be presented to the CA board at their January 2024 board meeting. And the recommendation is to approve these final subcommittee reports, which have been distributed. Some of them have been distributed.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. We did receive 3 reports, and they were distributed today. I apologize for the late distribution on those reports, and also posted to our website. What I would recommend is that the committees provide a brief overview of their reports to the full committee. This was an item that carried forward from the last meeting. And actually, our next item after that is Community Advisory Committee achievements and suggestions for work plan. And I know many of the couple of the reports actually have recommendations for work plan for 2024. So it'll be a good segue into that next item. But if the chair of the subcommittees would can provide an overview of their reports. We had a report from the Electric Vehicle Subcommittee, Underserved Community, and Schools Subcommittee, School Outreach Subcommittee.
It looks like Dwight's not here, and he's chair of the outreach committee to communities of concern. So we've got Rick, we've got Kevin Norris for the electric vehicle report and Deborah Shade for school outreach. So Kevin, do you want to summarize the report from that subcommittee?
Sure. There were actually just a couple items we have to recommend for the board coming up for 2024. And one of them is to put a couple other items on the webpage that we have. And one of them is to talk about the lower cost of maintenance for EVs. It may, I think there's not a lot of people out there, especially if you don't own one or have any experience with it, understand really the zero maintenance or near zero maintenance for electric vehicles. And I think it's beneficial for if people are out there looking that they understand that. There's also an alternative fuels data center calculator. And we're curious if that's the best reference for CEA customers and how accurate it is. One of the committee members came up with a calculator that we can use if that works, this alternative fuels data center, but we could talk about that a little more and recommend something. There was another thing we wanted to recommend, and that had to do with coordinating city members to get locations for potential EV charging infrastructure. I think that would be important moving forward for anybody that wants to come to the committee and offer installation, or for future grants that are on the horizon to install EV infrastructure, EV charging infrastructure. So if we had those already identified and did a little bit of math up front, the grants, when they come in pretty fast. There is one right now for DC fast charging it's actually closing on Tuesday, but there's going to be others from the feds. So I think if we could just do our homework before everything comes out, we'd have a better shot at it. Those were the 2 items that we had come up with. Yes.
So on the identification of locations, I would imagine that our cities are already involved in some of that. And would it be better to have a joint committee with one membership from city staffed so that it can be a coordinated effort that way? Or are you thinking private owners stepping forward?
When I talked to San Marcos, they actually had both. They had city property identified and they gave us a list of potential private landowners. The key is with a lot of these grants is right along the highway, and we're key for that, 78 and 5 and 15. So if there is land and it's not buried off of the highway, somewhere close, where people could get off, get a charge and get back on and have a place to maybe eat or use the restroom or, you know, I think if we had some locations like that identified, we could do some legwork up front, like I said, and check with the infrastructure to see if there is power nearby and all the amenities. In other words, would they fit all the boxes that are out for typical grants? But you're right. I think if we had one member from each city contact or meet with their sustainable coordinator or somebody in their planning department at each city to nail this, it was easy for me to get for San Marcos. Thank you.
Can I just make sure that I just need a clarification. The EV charging station you have just mentioned is DC first charger or including level 2?
It could be both, depending on the grant. We're installing some, well, level 2 can go typically in parking garages or apartment complexes. They're really hard for people that do not have a garage, that live in a community like that, to be able to purchase a vehicle and charge it. So it could be either or. It could be level 2 or DC fast charging.
Yeah, just with a comment there. Two significant changes sort of in the charging world. One is that the standard chargers will all be Tesla compatible starting next year. And the other thing is that I think only fast chargers are going to work so that all the cars are going to be fast charging capable, and each year the charging capacity and speed of new EVs increases, so that you're going to get fast chargers down to 20 minutes on most models by 2025. So that means when you plan fast chargers, it's nice to have associated facilities like a restroom or a restaurant, but a 20-minute stop for a 300-mile range charge is not bad.
Right, that's that NACS. It's called NACS, North American Charging Standard. And they're all, well, the big manufacturers are changing over from the CCS to that charger. And it does level 2 and 3 DC fast charging. But one thing I've been thinking about a lot, I hadn't really talked to the committee yet about it, but I know we have a Tesla charging station. I think there are 20 of them in San Marcos. And I don't know what the rates are, or if we do go after a grant, would it be something that would give us points if the CEA would special rate the EV charging community? In other words, if we were to put in a charging station with either 10 or 20 or whatever it might be, even 6, could that whoever owned those have a discounted cost of electricity, reduced cost of electricity for EV charging to encourage it? But like I said, I've been thinking about it the last few days now, and I wanted to talk to the committee about it, but we haven't met since October. But it's just something on the heels that may come up as well.
Vice Chair, would you like me to provide a response to his question? Yeah, so our board, as a community choice energy authority, or has full decision-making with regards to rate setting. So they certainly could consider something like that. And if so if the subcommittee, would want to recommend something like that, the board could consider it. We do mirror SDG&E's various EV rates that they have, of course, at our then equivalent at our rates, but we do have the same various EV rates. But could
Yes.
offer something different as well.
Right. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just recently experienced that myself of basically using two that were, one was 49 cents a kilowatt hour, one was 39 cents a kilowatt hour from the same manufacturer or provider. And I've been told it is somewhat set by the property owner or the region or areas. I've gone to a community college and charged and it was free or your first hour was free. So it's really set flexible that way. And I think it would be a positive for us to be able to, support something like that or if you sign up for services, there's like Tesla, if you sign up for subscription, you get it for less, per kilowatt hour. And some of the other ones do that also.
Yeah, and maybe I should clarify, the rates that our board sets are the rates that they charge the EV owner for electricity, and then the EV owner sets their rates that the consumer pays.
Right. The company that owns the charger, that's the rates that we charge them. They can put any rate. Yeah. So it would be, it would have to stipulate if we give you a discount rate that needs to be passed on to the EV driver.
Barbara, I just clarification, when you say CEA can structure their rates, you're talking about the commodity price exclusively, right?
Yeah, yes, what we charge
Okay,
our customers.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions on the EV subcommittee report? Yes. Linda.
Well, I'm signed up with 3 different kind of EV chargers. Okay, there's ChargePoint, Blink, and EV Go. So how are we going to decide who gets those contracts between those 3 vendors that I know about? Might be more than those, but those are only 3 I've used.
I don't think it would be ChargePoint, EV Go. It would be the owner of the chargers. In other words, if the city wanted to go after a grant or a property owner wanted to go after a grant, and as part of that, CEA said, well, if the power that goes through that charger, no matter what charger it is, ChargePoint, EV Go, Electrify America, anybody, the power that goes through that, we'll sell it to you for 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And in turn, you need to pass that savings on of whatever percentage that might be to the customer. So you would still have your cards, right, for each charge. I know that's frustrating too. We've been working on that for a long time. I don't know if we're going to get anywhere, but it wouldn't matter what the brand of the charger is. It's more of the location and who owns the charger. Because, yeah.
So we're trying to put it on private property rather than any public property.
It could be either. It could be either.
I've got an example. Like when you go to stay at a hotel, it's Hilton or something like this. It's the same that each of those have a different property owner, but then they have a management company. So I think what's going to happen with this is that you have a franchisee or the owner of the thing, and then they contract out with who's going to run it with their equipment.
Right.
So that's how it typically works. I think.
It sounds like to me, one of your goals is also to have Clean Energy Alliance as the energy provider. I mean, that's the top goal. Then the second goal is get more chargers in the community so that more people are in electric cars, right? Okay.
That's right. Thank you.
Miss,
Okay, so if our goal is to increase the number of the charging station, is there any way we could help the community who don't have a infrastructure to support charging stations? I was told that there are communities, older communities, not necessarily low-income communities. Still, their infrastructure, electric supplying infrastructure is old, so they cannot really install EV charging station nearby. There are such a community like this. And I'm just wondering if we could help those communities.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the grid upgrade, and that's SDG&E. But there are grants and programs out there that help people get chargers installed. The permit process would push SDG&E to upgrade their grid. I know.
Move on to the report from Deborah on school outreach.
All right, thank you. First of all, since we're brand new, I'm gonna review the whole thing. We have a membership with myself from Solana Beach, Paige Decino, Carlsbad, Linda Daniels, Carlsbad, Mo Lasavde from Oceanside, Nancy Oshley from Vista, and Jennifer Kirschbaum from San Marcos. We set a mission statement really that our school community and to support our schools to become models of sustainability and environmental responsibility by the adoption of 100% clean energy solutions. Through resources, initiatives, and education, we strive to empower CEA schools to embrace renewable energy sources and energy efficient practices. We identified three problem areas. One, that schools should be a partner in clean energy goals for our cities. Schools are being charged at commercial rates by SDG&E and CEA, and this is making it extremely hard for schools to adjust to any volatility in the energy market cost with fixed public funds. And then third, schools are an important link to our community, i.e. our underserved community and the next generation. Leveraging partnerships in a 100% clean energy schools program to improve connection to our community. And so we have prioritized what we believe the board should address. And the first is to work with our CEA's key account manager that was just hired to evaluate data on school solar programs and energy use. Many schools, if they passed a GEO bond, have solar already on their schools. Not all communities can afford to pass. Their community has not supported necessarily a GEO bond, but if they have, there's data off those grids that would be very useful in terms of energy uses on campus. And then establish an 100% energy clean energy schools program to educate and recruit schools to become partners in our mission. And then one that's kind of hanging out there, and again, we don't know the viability for the board and what their appetite would be for this, but investigate the possibility of a public school rate plan and work on ways to provide a rate plan for schools if they join 100% clean energy. Also be a service to our school community for resources and support for clean energy solutions, i.e. electric buses, renewable energy self-generation programs, and solar grant programs. Establish ways that CEA can support community awareness, sustainability, education, and 100% clean energy schools program. And then finally, explore an idea we call school ambassadors or climate action clubs that would partner with CEA to educate the community regarding clean energy solutions. So any questions? Go ahead, Paige.
I know I'm on that committee, but I have a question too, because I know when Oceanside launches next April, I believe, their schools essentially have no solar. So I wonder if facilitating solar on particular schools or school districts would be part of our committee recommendation? You guys from the Ocean side.
Well, I mean, I can tell you from the school side, many of us that have solar projects either have applied and received a grant that we were just talking about. We passed a bond and the community basically funded that as part of the modernization of that school, with the idea that all construction would have a sustainability focus. Oceanside, I believe, is trying to prepare to pass a bond. I shouldn't, I'm not sure, so don't quote me. But I think that there's efforts out there, but there's also many grant programs outside of that sort of community funded bond scenario now that are out there for schools to put solar and our EV, I mean, EV chargers as well, and also electric buses. for
I
school fleet.
just know trying to work with Oceanside School District, they don't have much in the way of expertise or motivation to do this right now, was my interpretation. So I'm wondering if there's some way we can just facilitate their move to get more solar. Anyway.
One example, I'm on the board of the Climate Action Campaign, and then they worked with the Sweetwater School District student organization to advocate for 100% clean energy. And the students got the school board to approve going to 100% clean energy. So maybe the route to success is to go to the students, not the school board.
We have oh gosh, I'm forgetting their names, but we have 2 ecology clubs in elementary school that come to our board meetings to talk about things like that. So I think there's some real advocacy partners with our student clubs. I think with Oceanside, with them coming on, I mean, you know, coming into new, this is an opportunity to have those conversations about how we can support their efforts and maybe help them. Well, I mean, we're not going to write the grant for them, but help them understand the benefits of that. And most student parking lots at high schools are covered with solar. So any other questions? Okay.
Can I just ask one more? I know most of our subcommittees are due to kind of sunset because we've been working for a year, but our school subcommittee just kind of got off the ground. So Barbara, at some point, can you address the future of our subcommittee?
Yeah, thank you, committee member DeCino. The schools subcommittee and the Green for 2035 subcommittee are the 2 new subcommittees that would continue into 2024. And then you're right, the other 2 committees then would be completed at, with this being the end of the year. And then with our new work plan in 2024, then potentially out of that work plan, the community advisory committee would identify other subcommittees that they may feel is warranted based on the work plan.
I'm happy to speak on behalf of Dwight because I'm on that subcommittee.
Okay, I was just going to ask whether you or Deborah wanted to speak, but you're up.
Okay. So we were the subcommittee addressing underserved communities, and one of the tasks was just trying to define what an underserved community was. And I think we came up with some ideas that could include things like low income, seniors, access to solar, those kind of things, but more or less trying to put that on the cities to identify their underserved committees. Communities. And keep in mind that according to the JPA agreement, we have to use our funding pretty equitably across based on electric load across communities. We didn't come up with anything specific that we wanted to work on other than some sources of funding that we might, want to access, like some of the things that you've already talked about. Anyway, that was pretty much it.
I wanted to recall an experience I had in the city of Del Mar. We got a grant to do outreach for energy improvements for senior citizens when I was on the board of Del Mar Community Connections, which provides senior services in Del Mar. And we hired a consulting firm and they went out and visited 80 seniors and talked to them about free upgrades, inexpensive upgrades, credits. And that outreach program lasted for 6 months. The results I found very disappointing. And the reason was twofold. Even though these were person-to-person visits, many of the seniors thought these were people selling solar panels and they slammed the door in their face, right? So senior outreach was much more hazardous than anybody expected. The second response was, even if it was free, many of the seniors said, we're probably going to be living in this old house for another 5 or 10 years, and we don't want to spend any money doing anything. We're just going to cruise in. And even if it was free, many of them said, we don't want strangers coming into our house even to put in LED light bulbs. Right? We actually got LED light bulbs installed by a neighbor-to-neighbor program because they trusted their neighbor, but they didn't trust anybody else. And I just want to recall that experience because when you're doing outreach to seniors, there are some challenges. And that was the lesson learned in this program. And we didn't really get many energy upgrades done at all. So I wanted to share that experience because some things seem simple until you try them.
Those are great comments, and I would extrapolate that to say that each sub-market within the hard to reach area has their own market barriers for these types of technologies and clean energy. So it does require someone to look at those market barriers and really think hard about how to make the program successful.
That, the underserved communities committee, early conversations were really around how do you subsidize their bill? You know, how do you get them involved in cleaner energy, delivered and used by them as a property owner? And how could we get around their nervousness about taking on possibly a higher bill or an unknown bill? And one of the areas that we talked about was sort of a clean energy business club where you would get that, identification at your door. You might get a mug or something, and there would be some sort of fee involved or something that we could use to begin a fund that we could do some of the work for those that are not financially able. And I don't know, one-time money is great, but it's one-time money, it goes away. It would be really great to figure out a revenue source to really build a financial fund that we could really help some of our underserved communities really begin to change the way to change the type of energy they use, really become part of the solution for our city. And so I think if I was to ask the board anything, I would ask, is that a viable program? It's like Peter, it's like Robin Hood. Can we tax the rich to pay and subsidize those that are not able? And I think if there was incentive and they were part of a clean energy, business group or something that we could provide some level of perk, it might be a way, and they would feel like they were giving back as well as part of that membership. So I don't know how that, we also talked about if you had a construction project, could the city tax at a certain fee and that fee go directly into a fund that would help to provide the financial backing for ongoing, that may be subsidized by grant funds, but would be an ongoing source of revenue. So I don't know, Barbara, if you would be able to comment on that. I know there was a little bit of pushback on the fee structure, but is there any viability with that, with asking the board for that type of program that would come out of this?
Um, certainly the subcommittee, as part of the report could include a recommendation for the board to consider establishing a program such as you're describing, in terms of how that program is funded outside of maybe our normal funds, reserves. We'd have to look at, what do we have the ability to implement? So, we don't have fee setting ability for developer fees, for example, for cities. But could we request the cities, or could we work with them? We might, initiate conversations with them. So, and then we need to, think about the idea of charging certain groups, whether or not we would have the legal authority. One of the requirements of our of a community choice aggregation is that categories of customers are treated equitably. And so we'd have to look at how could we accomplish the goal of creating a funding source for this fund while meeting the requirement of equitable rates among classes of customers. But certainly, the whole idea of the subcommittees is to come up with ideas, and that's an idea, and I think it's worthy of putting on the report for the board consideration. And not all ideas make it all the way to the end, but that doesn't mean you don't put it out there.
Right. And I think that was another one from the schools committee. Could you, there was some strong support for asking for a special rate. And that would be a very difficult conversation because again, you're subsidizing. So we're just interested in the viability of that proposal. And if there was way either of these type of proposals would be viable within the organization.
Let me ask our general counsel, Ms. Mitchell, if she can weigh in with regards to the legal aspects of rate setting and having similar those kind of programs where you're offering discounts or lower rates compared to others within the same class.
They're challenging. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't have that as something to look into, to put it on the report and then take a look at those legal challenges and see if there's a way to overcome them.
I think they're both included. So I just wanted to should we move those forward? Is that something we should consider moving forward? Or do you feel like?
Well, right now, the topic for discussion is what you're going to report as your ideas to.
And let them select.
The board, right? And so I wouldn't look at a legal challenge as a reason not to include something. That would be more of a board decision.
Yes. For supporting that type of program, I am wondering if there is any other communities that has already running that type of program. I was told that Santa Barbara, for example, that they are actually pretty successful to implement all kinds of clean energy programs for a long term. And maybe we can look at other communities that is successful about that type of program and see how they are running and then what's the cost, what's that, so their rate setting. And so usually that type of, from my experience working in a corporate setting, so adding that dollar sign somewhere is convincing. So that's my experience. And also another thing is, someone mentioned it, market barriers. Oceanside sounds like a little hesitant to go to the clean energy. How about, is there any way we can just run a little survey or research about, so what is your barrier? I mean, why they are hesitant? And so finding out what's the barrier and then address it. And then that might help them to come around increasing the use of clean energy.
Follow on. So we did talk to a couple other CCAs, and they gave us a ton of information. Some of that's in the full report, but that's a great idea. We should be talking to other CCAs to find out what they're doing, where they're successful, where the challenges. I think it was Sonoma talked about how they actually went to certain groups to find out what the particular market barriers were to try to figure out how to design the program. So we didn't go as far as saying how they should or how we may want to fund these programs, because I think it's a little complicated by, well, one, the cost of the program, not only any incentive or discount, but also administrative costs, but also is there other funding available? And so we kind of left that up to CEA staff to work out. But yeah, those are details they would have to complete.
All right, well, everyone, I apologize for being late. This is really fun here. I came from a Sandag meeting talking about cross-border sewage from Imperial Beach, which was sobering to say the least. But as I told the experts there, I said, I think you guys are number one with number two. But in any event, so Don tells me we're on item, because kind of blending items 2 and 3 and committee reports have been made. So yes.
Yeah.
Paige.
First of all, I did talk to somebody at Santa Barbara schools and they do not have a special rate, just to let you know. But I also, piggybacking on what Deborah said, is there a way, Barbara, that individual customers could pay into a fund, say, I want, my other group is trying to fund the Karen Farah customers in Oceanside. Is there a way that just individual customers could say, yeah, I'll chip in another $4 a month for this fund that goes specifically for whatever we're looking at? Is that a possibility?
It's something I have not ever looked into or researched. So it would be something that we would have to check through our legal team, and I don't know the answer to that.
Fair enough. Other comments, questions? Yes, Tracy.
I mean, I agree with you on the rate thing to have those types of rates, but I think the best way, which makes it simpler, is that if we are able to support them with grants and funding to make energy efficiency and they're using less energy, then we don't have to worry about the rates, which is more of a clear, way to go. And I know about when you talked about the Oceanside schools, I know that there's also, firms out there that have worked with commercial businesses to say, we'll help you put up a canopy over your parking lot and the solar. I don't know how they do the deals, but maybe Oceanside, school district needs to look at those sources. Because years ago, I know a company did that out in Santee for an RV park, where they came up and said, we'll put it up the solar canopy. You'll get a discount on the electricity that it generates. And they were able to double the rent for RV storage at the same time. And they didn't have to put up anything other than having the property.
Yeah, Chair Warden, if I can make a comment. So the committee may recall we recently, the board has approved the agreements related to the Solar Plus program, which the initial phase is residential. And it's a program there whereby residential customers can get access and have solar and battery storage without a credit check, because they're not purchasing the system, they're buying the electricity from Clean Energy Alliance that's being produced by it. The next phase will be commercial, which would also include schools. And so schools could, once we offer that phase, schools could participate in the Solar Plus for commercial and have access to the solar and battery storage without the capital outlay. So some of the barriers that committee member Shade had mentioned about, funding and getting the capital funds, they wouldn't have that if by going through this program. So so that will be something that will be offered.
Thanks for that. That's a good point. And the current program is beginning and it can be upscaled and expanded to address schools and maybe other areas too. Paige.
Just one more thing on schools. Is it appropriate for representatives of our school subcommittee to go and talk to the school districts? So I'm picking on Oceanside in particular, because I know they don't have much solar, to talk about some, when we have a little more information, talk about some things that they might be able to do in terms of, getting solar or energy efficiency or whatever.
I'd invite Barbara to comment that. I think the answer is yes, but you have to do it very carefully. We can't go and represent CEA. But if you want to go and collect information, I think you can. If you've clearly identified you're a member of the advisory committee, you're not necessarily speaking for the board. Barbara, you have other advice about that?
Thank you, Chair. Go ahead.
I was going to chime in, Chair Warden, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
yes, please.
So Chair Warden was right, but I would add the caveat that even any individual also can't even represent this body. So you can always feel free to go as an individual, but just be very careful to limit your comments to what make sure you say, this is my personal opinion. I don't have any authority to speak on behalf of the committee or the board.
So is it okay to say, I'm a representative of this subcommittee and I'm just here to gather information?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
you
just
can
want to,
accurately describe who you are.
okay.
I'm a member of the Community Advisory Committee. I serve on a subcommittee for this and that. I'm just here to collect information. I don't speak for the board or the agency. And I think you would get some helpful information if you did that.
Yeah, and thank you, Chair Warden. And along those same comments is, the purpose of the subcommittee is to advise our board on things they think that recommendations for our board to consider. And so to the extent that you're gathering information for our board, as opposed to making recommendations to their board, I think you'd be okay.
Yeah, good. All right. I sort of dropped in the middle of this. Do we need more discussion on whatever is going on? I'm assuming we're talking about achievements and maybe the work plan and have finished the committee reports. Am I right?
So we're just wrapping up the third one. The last one is the local programs, which I did get a report from the local programs in October. And I don't know if there's one of the committee members just has the report. I can read what's in the report. It's pretty succinct, and I'd be happy to share the local programs report, and then the committee can.
Well, let's see. Does anybody from the local program committee would prefer to present it themselves? Ron, you want to do that, or Barbara can read it? Either one.
I'm not in the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm in the underserved community.
All right, then Barbara, why don't you go ahead and read it for us if it's short?
Okay, sure. The mission statement is evaluate and propose potential programs to further the equitable implementation of the member organization's climate action plans. Problem areas identified by the subcommittee are different housing types have unequal access to clean energy options, such as solar panels, EV charging infrastructure, heat pumps, etc. And then the subcommittees prioritize recommendations to the board to address the problem areas are to provide solar and storage to mobile home residents and provide low, no interest loans for energy efficiency, green home improvements.
All right, thank you. Does anybody from that subcommittee want to comment further? If not, does anybody in the room have questions about that or comments on it? Yes, Tracy.
The only thing I'm thinking about, I guess, with that community power thing that the PUC and stuff is talking about, wouldn't the mobile home storage and stuff come under those changes that are being proposed?
Anybody know the
I'd
answer
ask
to
that
that?
from Barbara, I guess.
Barbara, if you know the answer?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with the community power.
I thought there's some new legislation going through the PUC to basically change how community power is done, which would be similar to what we're proposing for mobile homes, like they did with NEM 3. I'm not an expert on it, but I've just read the news that they're going after community power, solar, just like they did for residential, and that the solar power and storage for mobile homes would fall under those potential new rules.
Well, it doesn't sound like we've got anybody who's expert on that, but if that's happening, yes, I think that would be an area for a local program to figure out how to implement that successfully in our jurisdiction. Yes.
Are you talking about the changes of the virtual net metering? Because that falls under the community power
I
area.
just saw something labeled community power and they were going to change the rules, and it was similar to basically making it not worthwhile to do, just like they did with NIM 3.
Yeah.
That's all I know.
All right. Well, let's maybe invite you, Tracy, to do some follow-up research on that and bring it back to us. And I do think it's a topic, if something is going on there where there's going to be new rules, that the program committee could take a look at it. Anything else on the program committee? If not, Barbara, I guess, should we do a formal motion to approve these final subcommittee reports? And then we should talk a little bit about what happens next. Do you want our subcommittee chairs, or you want me as the chair of the CAC to present them to the board? What are your thoughts on all that?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the recommendation is for the Community Advisory Committee to approve the subcommittee report. So a vote would be appropriate. In terms of the presentation in January, I think it would be terrific if the chairs of the subcommittees, or if the chair wants to defer to a committee member, a subcommittee member, to make the presentation to the board. I think that would be terrific. And, maybe just, short, brief 2 or 3 minutes from each subcommittee, I think would be, I think that would be appreciated by the board. And I think it'd be a great way to wrap up the year.
I agree. And I would strongly encourage somebody from each subcommittee to volunteer to do that. If there's a subcommittee that can't recruit a volunteer to do that, I'll fill in and do it, but it's much better if somebody from the subcommittee, because then you're in a position to answer questions and give more in depth. But so let's just take an inventory. Who's willing to show up for their subcommittee? And I assume they can show up online, Barbara? Or will they need to show up in person?
They can participate via Zoom if they're not able to be in person. And let me give you the date. The board meeting where they will be receiving the reports is January 25th. Their meetings are also at 2 p.m. Here at Oceanside City Council chambers.
Okay, I will start the flow here, and hopefully there'll be a landslide. I will volunteer on behalf of the underserved committee to show up. Who would like to show up for local programs? How about schools or EVs? Okay, we've got
I'm
a
sorry,
volunteer.
Chair, I can't
I-
see.
So this
So
is
if I
Kevin.
could get a verbal.
Yeah. Just state your name verbally so she can get it.
Kevin Norris
Kevin
for
Norris
EV.
is volunteering for EVs. And what are the other subcommittees?
I
Was
can do
there-
the schools, Deborah.
Schools.
Shade.
Deborah Shade is volunteering to do schools.
And I'm sorry, who was the volunteer for local programs?
We don't have one yet. We're
Oh,
still
okay.
looking.
Okay,
I
Okay.
can do that.
So Paige DeCino is volunteering.
I'm trying to
for that?
remember, Tracy, are you a chairperson of that group now?
In the last meeting, I got elected chair, but I
Okay.
actually have a golf
I
tournament,
can do
a
it.
golf tournament that day. The farmers, sorry.
Okay, well, and certainly you all can trade around amongst your subcommittee if you want to get somebody else to come. And I will backstop it if you can't do it, but it's going to be much better. And I think you all deserve to stand up for your 3 minutes and present the work you've been doing. So, all right, let's have a motion then, if I could. Yeah, or comments? Paige?
Yeah, I just want, Barbara, I want to ask you whether the full report, like for the underserved committee, subcommittee, community subcommittee is going to the board because there's a lot more detail than what you just saw in the summary.
Thank you. Yes, so once the subcommittee approves the reports, it will be the full report that goes to the board, will be attached to the staff report.
Okay, good. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the final subcommittee reports and forward them on to the board.
So moved.
Motion, is there a second? Second. She beat you. Okay, any further discussion, comments? Seeing none, let's have a vote. I don't know if we need to do a roll call, but let's just say yes or put your hand up. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? So Barbara, for your benefit, the vote was unanimous, no votes and no abstentions. So great, everybody take a deep breath. We worked pretty hard all year in a subcommittee context and we're passing some good information along. And as I've said before, I think the board members are very appreciative. They are got their hands full trying to do what they do, and they're really looking to us for guidance on how to implement programs. And I think they will greatly value this. So if we're ready, let's move on to the next thing, which is the work plan for next year. Barbara, did you want to introduce that and then we can discuss it?
Sure. So the annually, the board sets the work plan for the year for the Community Advisory Committee, and that's pursuant to the Community Advisory Committee policy that's been adopted by the board. So the board develops and establishes the work plan as well as the meeting schedule for the Community Advisory Committee. And as part of that process, we do seek input from the Community Advisory Committee for items that this committee feels would be what they would recommend that the board consider adding to that work plan. There were a number of items included in your subcommittee reports that would be, we will include to the board for their consideration, but would love to hear if there are other items that you believe that this advisory committee should look at for 2024. The board will be approving the work plan and schedule at the January 25th meeting. So the folks identified will be in attendance at that meeting as well. But we also will, this will be having the subcommittee reports at that January 25th meeting will also help to encapsulate the accomplishments that you all made, because you all spent a lot of your own time meeting and developing your subcommittee reports and looking at the various issues. And it's, as the chair mentioned, it's your time and efforts are greatly appreciated in helping us to develop, the groundwork for our programs that we'll be considering in the coming years.
All right, thank you for that, Barbara. Let's open the floor. This is a chance to look ahead. And if you think things are coming down next year in our field of inquiry that should be on the work plan, this is a time to speak up. If you think we should continue the existing committee structure, you could say that. Or if you think we need to change it, say that. Who would like to make a comment? I think Linda looks like she's getting ready.
I think we should continue the committees, especially since schools just started. Deborah's been doing a great job, getting us all together. So I really like the committee being able to meet on their own with Zoom calls and things, and I think that's working very well.
I do too. Does anybody see that differently? Elizabeth, you look like you want to say something.
Thank you, Chair Warden. I would just point out that in order to keep the subcommittees as ad hoc committees, they need to have a limited purpose and a limited time frame. Otherwise, you turn them into Brown Act meetings like this one, where it has to be agendized and meet in person and whatnot. So if the goal is to have them continue to meet by Zoom, they need to be narrowly focused and have an end date.
Thank you for reminding us of that. And I think our role as the Community Advisory Committee is just to tell the board if it's what we think the committee structure is working well, that they've authorized us to do, and we want to keep it going. We don't need to say more than that, because we don't really, I won't say, unless Barbara corrects me, we don't need their permission to decide what subcommittees we want to do. We decided that on our own, as long as we work within work plan. Yes, Deborah.
So in the 2024 work plan, my assumption is we're going to get some direction from the board, right? They're going to get our plans
Hope so,
and they're
yeah.
going to make some decisions and they're going to sort of approve or initiate some of that, some of those suggestions. Wouldn't we then be part of the vetting to kind of be setting those up? That's where I see the committee might be a 2-year committee, because 1 year to get the idea and to get the agreement. And then the second year is if something is selected, to get that moving or planned or, work with staff. I don't know what it would look like. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I agree. If we give our report on the 25th and there are questions that they need answers to, so the committee would still need to be involved
Right.
to bring those answers back.
So I think the answers, those are all both good suggestions, is we want to keep the committees going in a Brown Act compliant manner, whatever that is. And we may change subcommittees or we may keep them all going. Yeah, other comments? Yes.
To me, it appears we've made a recommendation and basically continue to kind of fine tune those recommendations. Like the EV one talks about locations, of where it should be. I've looked at some, city plans and stuff, and I haven't seen anybody that really said, all it talks about is, having EV charging, but they haven't gone into recommendations. So I almost see like a 2-year cycle, but basically the goal or purpose is to refine the recommendations from the first year or the school group of what you've already come up with on the first round.
Chair Warden, I think it
Yes.
might be helpful if I share my screen and display the 2023 work plan.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
that we all kind of have an idea of what we're actually talking about here. So this item is our 2023 work plan, which the board had adopted. And it lays out basically what the topics are at our meetings, and then the items that we'll be working on. And many of them would automatically roll forward. For example, providing input and for the budget workshop, for example, and input for budget consideration would be something that we would automatically put on. We have so this is what we had this year. In terms of the comment with regards to the recommendations to the board from the subcommittees, and wouldn't that then be part of your work plan? I think it'll be dependent on the item. So if it's an item that requires, we would want to be seeking input into, then we would add that. That would be part of the recommendation to the board for the work plan.
Yeah, thanks for that, Barbara. And what we've done this year, I think, is Barbara has put agenda items on that we need to know as they come down from the board. And then we worked around and with those to do the subcommittee stuff. And that's a good structure that I think we should continue and rely on Barbara or Greg Wade when he takes over to bring to us what we need from the board. Yes, Deborah.
So I just wanted to ask our attorney some clarity on the ad hoc committee and the Brown Act. If the ad hoc committee has a term of 2 years, is that too long? Like, what did you mean by a defined timeline? Because if the work of the committee needs to be 2 years, can they still be an ad hoc?
That's a good question. The best practice in this area is to limit it to less than 12 months. So I would suggest redefining the scope. For example, if you had an ad hoc committee that was working on ideas, then that ad hoc committee gets dissolved, and your next ad hoc committee is implementing items 1 and 2, ideas for implementation or something like that. So there's a way to define it so that it makes it smaller, is one idea.
Yeah, I guess the concern I have is we still have cities joining. I mean, we're not fully vetted, I guess. So my recommendation, if you have to change the name of, or modify the scope, but I think until we get our membership solid, I think these committees still have a pretty valuable input. And I'm sure that's why a lot of us are here. So I'm just trying to understand what's the best way to move forward.
I think what attorney has suggested is the best way to move forward. We officially dissolve these committees, say at the end of January, after we present our reports. And then the next item of business is we reconstitute a new set of committees going forward. They might be different, they might be the same, they might be similar. And we'll revisit membership. People may want to move around. Unless Elizabeth tells me that doesn't work, I think that works.
Yeah, and Chair Warden, if I can add, the two committees that are newly formed that would continue are the Schools Committee, Schools Outreach Committee, and the Green by 2035 Committee. Those committees just formed. For example, the Electric Vehicle Subcommittee for 2024, the recommendation with regards to the charging infrastructure, for example, that may be now a new subcommittee is subcommittee looking at EV charging infrastructure, which that's their focus. So,
yeah. Maybe I've been too long in government, but this actually makes sense to me that we're all going to keep working on what we care about, but we're going to restructure things a bit so that we do it. And it's not that we're trying to avoid the Brown Act and being open and transparent. It's that we're trying to enable people to work informally at the subcommittee level without having to post an agenda and notice a meeting and all of that. So yes, Deborah, sorry.
For the work plan for next year, I was wondering if there's any interest in this group discussing or prioritizing all the input from the 4 subcommittees that we've heard from. So like, I don't know if you're interested in it, but like every subcommittee had some suggestions, right? So do we want to have a formal list of this is our priorities? Do we want to discuss that or not? That was one question I had.
Good idea. Other thoughts on that? Rick?
Yeah, I think that's going to be coming back to us from the board. Kind of, I mean, they'll maybe knock some stuff off or recommend some stuff, and then it can come back to us and we can prioritize it. But I don't think we should prioritize it before we give it to the board.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That does, and it makes sense to me that we do what Paige is suggesting, because we really haven't, as a full committee, spent an in-depth discussion of what we've all come up with, and we should do that. But we should wait and see what the board wants to do with it. And they may have their own agenda about things that they want the advisory committee to address in the community.
Okay, and the other question I have, this might be more for Barbara, is once the board decides upon some specific programs like energy efficiency or something, I'm just curious of how involved we can be as a committee to provide input, recommendations, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm sure the staff is working on that, but I just wonder how we interact on that.
Barbara?
Yeah, thank you, Paige. Again, I think it's going to depend on what the specific program is. So the board may say, we're interested in energy efficiency, but we don't know what we should focus on. So can you take that to the community advisory committee to get input, for example? So typically it's the board, would provide some direction if it was something that they want input on. The other item is what we have been doing is as we are developing programs for board consideration, we've been bringing that to this subcommittee, and we will continue, or to the full committee, and we'll continue to do that to provide the outline of what we're looking at and gather input.
All right, thanks. How about, yes, Tracy?
Like we're starting the Solar Plus program and stuff like that for residential, and we talked about maybe going to commercial. Would it be right to have a subcommittee kind of following that or monitoring that?
Could be.
Because that's something that's come out and it kind of ties into several of our other subcommittee recommendations.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to close down this group of subcommittees and submit our final reports, then the next topic would be when we're reactivating them, do we do we have some new ones like that? And I think we could. How about, let me ask the committee for a moment about our meeting schedules. Everybody comfortable with that? Do you think we should meet more often, less often? Or we're about right? Because if we want that to change, this would be the time to ask for it. It's about right. About right, about right. Okay, so I'm not hearing a burning desire to change that. And I think
Chair,
that's, yeah.
I was going to ask about the time, the starting time, and if 2 o'clock will still work.
Let me ask the rest of you. It's a problem for me, but I'm an alternate board member and I'm going to have to go off as chair of the CAC. Probably, this may be my last meeting for all I know, probably. And that's because the board adopted a policy which makes sense that the chair of the board and the chair of the CAC shouldn't be from the same city. And at the moment they are. Councilmember Dave Drucker is the chair of the CEA board and I'm the chair of this group. They gave me a pass to stay with you through this year, but I think going forward, they're going to implement that policy. And so it'll be somebody else, one of the other board alternates who will take over as a CAC chair. But so don't worry about me and 2 o'clock. How's 2 o'clock work for the rest of you on a Thursday?
So I want to chime in that where I live in Escondido, this is the furthest location we could be at. It's even shorter for me to go to Del Mar. So when we leave here at 3:30, I am stuck on that 78 traffic. It's terrible.
I think the board spent a lot of time deciding where to meet. Initially, we were rotated
Right.
places and then we met in Carlsbad. And then when Oceanside and Vista joined, the decision
Right.
was made to meet here and Barbara and her staff investigated the technical capabilities and who could put us online and on the YouTube and this
Sure.
and that. And I think for better or worse, we're kind of stuck here.
Right, I can appreciate that, but being earlier in the day would help that.
Yeah. We should get you tickets for the Breeze, or not the Breeze, but the Sprinter.
Sprinter.
Other comments on scheduling or time of the day? So it sounds like I'm hearing consensus, Barbara, that 2 o'clock every other month on a Thursday is good. And that we're pretty good with the structure of the work plan from last year to continue and that we're going to continue.
Yes, Linda.
I'm sorry, Linda.
Wait,
We could do one. I don't remember why we picked 2 o'clock.
I'm sorry, Chair, with there was no audio, so we weren't able to hear it.
Linda Daniels was suggesting, can we move the meeting time from 2 o'clock to 1 o'clock? That might make it easier for folks that have a traffic problem. And I stated that I don't remember why we picked 2 o'clock, other than I know Barbara and her staff investigated when the room was available, and it may have been that Oceanside has other things going on in here. But I don't know. Barbara, do you know more on that?
It is the time that we reserved with Oceanside, but we do come in, early to set up, and if the Community Advisory Committee has a desire and wishes to try to see if we can change it to 1 p.m., we can work with Oceanside City staff and see if that's available. And if it is, we would make that as part of our recommendation to the board.
All right. Well, let's ask Rick. Rick, would that help you if we could send you home an hour earlier?
Yes, absolutely.
Rick's not the only one.
Oh, okay. Kevin too.
Next to Escondido.
How does everybody feel? Is everybody okay if we suggest we move it to 1 o'clock?
Sure.
All right, I'm hearing
thank you.
unanimous consensus. We would request that we have our meetings at 1 o'clock. Subject to Barbara, you confirming that the room's available and that it works from yours and the staff end. All right, other comments on the work plan?
I have one thing you just want to clarify.
Yes.
Just want to clarify. I think Paige brought it up. So for the next round of this committee thing, you were suggesting, or we all suggesting to have a to-do work list first before we start going through what our work plan is going to be, like a to-do, because a lot of subcommittees have something right now, either in the process of doing, so maybe making a to-do list, and then we'll be able to have a good work plan for the coming year.
Good question. My thoughts on that are any subcommittee that's got work in process, we're going to find a way to let you continue that. We want that to finish up. But we got to keep the window open a little bit if new things come down from the board that they want us to do that may require adding more work to a subcommittee or creating a new subcommittee. But most definitely, if you've got work in process that you want to follow up on, we're going to find a way to make sure you can do that. Are you freezing over there, Mo?
I'm actually having one layer, and then this one, it doesn't need to move to make it warmer, so
If we had any energy, we could
Give you
put some heat on.
senior citizen moment.
Yes. I share your cold. Other comments on the work plan? Anybody got anything else they want to forward up to the board? This is your chance. So I'm hearing, yes.
Sorry, in my report, I didn't mention what I brought today was, rates, for DC fast charging, operations. Would it be okay to put that another bullet point in my recommendation to the board? Or just leave what we talked about today, the 2 bullet points that I have today?
I think you can add that if the consensus of the group is, could you state it again? Sure.
So I had 2 bullet points, 2 recommendations, and I was, the last few days I had not talked to the committee yet, but I mentioned it here about could the CEA or would the CEA offer discounted rates to DC fast charging companies or private owners of DC fast charging that's open to the public. In other words, then they would pass that savings on.
I think we could make a recommendation that the feasibility of that be considered. I mean, I don't know what the implications are and whether that's something we as CEA can spend money on or not. Barbara, do you have thoughts on that? He's suggesting some sort of subsidy program for DC fast charging to make it more affordable for people.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that going back to our conversation about special discounted rates to fund for certain programs, there are some legal challenges, but you shouldn't let that stop you from putting that on the list as something for the board to consider looking into, and then we can look into it.
All right, let me look around the table. Are people okay if we add that as a recommendation to our to the work plan that the board authorize us to investigate the feasibility of some sort of program to facilitate DC fast charging? I'm seeing yes nods. Yeah.
Chair Warden, since the board or since the Community Advisory Committee voted to approve the reports, I think I would look to our general counsel, but I think it would be appropriate for the board or for the subcommittee to take a vote to add that to the EV subcommittee report.
All right,
Yeah, so
Elizabeth.
technically what you'd like to do is bring a motion for reconsideration on the adoption of the subcommittee reports and then add the amendment at that time.
All right, who would like to move that we reconsider the approval of the subcommittee reports? Kevin is making the motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a recommendation to add.
Okay,
First,
hold
all you
on.
have to do at this point is move to reconsider, so we
Right,
can
move to
reopen.
reconsider.
Is there a second for that?
Yes, second.
There's a second. No, seeing no discussion, all in favor of reconsidering, say aye or raise your hand. I'm seeing unanimous yes votes. Any noes? Any abstains? No. So now it's open to reconsider. Kevin?
So in addition to the 2 bullet points that I had brought earlier, that is in the report to the board from the EV charging committee, I'd like to add offering a discounted rate to DC fast charging operations.
So it sounds like you're bringing a motion to approve the subcommittee reports with that addition.
That's right.
Yes. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, is there discussion on that? If not, the second for the motion?
Tracy, second.
Tracy's the second. Any discussion on the motion? Let's have a show of hands for yes. Noes? Abstains? Unanimous approval on. Barbara, I assume you got enough text down to make a record of that, and if not, corner Kevin and he can help you with it.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, did you have another one? No, okay, that was it. All right, then I think we're done with the work plan, but part of this agenda item was to talk about our achievements. So let's take a moment and see who wants to brag about what we've done that's good. And I would offer, just to start, I think we've pretty seamlessly developed a working structure that's pretty effective through subcommittees and overall meetings at this level. And we've been pretty seamless at adapting to the new cities that have joined us and welcoming their representation. And I suspect that part of the world is going to slow down, if not stop for a while. I mean, maybe we're going to accept even still more cities, but I don't think in the near future that's likely to happen. Yes, Deborah.
I also want to recognize the volunteer work of many of this body who supported the enrollment and the early engagement, community engagement about our new cities. Many of you went to farmers markets, school presentations. So I think that was a real win as well.
Yes, and thank you. That reminds me, Paige, I still have your beach chair that I haven't given you back yet from the San Marcos Farmers Market. Don.
You better bring it next meeting.
Yeah, I have a question for Barbara. Since San Diego County Water Authority deciding desal plant is going to be joining us in 2025 and their energy use exceeds that of Del Mar and Solana Beach, will they have a representative on the board or on the Community Advisory Committee?
Good question.
Thank you for that question. No, the board is, the JPA specifies that the board members are elected officials from the cities. And while the desalination plant is a large customer, that doesn't result in them having a board member, and then the board members appoint the subcommittee members. So to the extent that someone from there would want us to would want to participate in the community advisory committee and submit an application, they could certainly be considered, but that doesn't result in the water authority having a community advisory committee member specifically for that account.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Don. I had thought about that. Would we want to make a recommendation that a tribal representative or a mobile home community representative or something might serve? And the answer is maybe, but they can be appointed from the cities that they're from. And I think that the structure of our system and the way the board looks at it is they don't want it to go beyond the representatives that they select from their cities. So Deborah, did you have something you want to say?
So I just have another celebration idea. I think we've been around and established long enough and bringing on another group. You know, I think we ought to consider a clean energy champion or award or something that we give as an organization and recognize and present it at the city council meeting of that individual. I just think that, you know, we need to keep the real positive part of our organization front forward. And I think that might be a win-win if there's anyone that the board would want to participate in and nominate from their city or something like that, that could be recognized. I think that would go a long way in our community positivity.
I think that's a great idea. A lot of cities acknowledge an employee of the quarter or something like that. And the Clean Energy Alliance could do that to draw attention to somebody who's contributed in a significant way. I don't think we need to do anything formal. This Barbara's heard that. She can pass that along as a suggestion. Other thoughts on our achievements? Yeah, I'm sorry, Barbara, go ahead.
That's okay, Chairwarden. My thought is to recommend to the board that the creation of some type of a recognition program or award program be part of your work plan for next year. And then this committee can develop, you know, what we're recognizing and the criteria and formalize it and then present that. And then we recommend that to the board for adoption.
Good idea. Everybody okay with that? She suggested we put it in the work plan that we help develop such a program. Good idea. I'm seeing unanimous consent to that. All right, other thoughts or people that want to brag about our achievements? For a minute. Don, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to congratulate everybody on their efforts. We've got a lot bigger community advisory committee than when I first joined it. And I've been working on community choice energy for too many years, for a long time, and it's really gratifying to see a lot of cities joining in at the success of the CEA. We've almost outlived one CEO, Barbara, who's done a great job getting us going. And, we're off and running, and I see a successful future. So sometimes it takes decades to get things off the ground. And I think the CEA has accelerated quite rapidly and has been very successful in a challenging energy environment. So for me, the big challenge in the future is almost all political. It's getting the PUC under control and responding to customer concerns, and also to upgrading our grid, which is totally outdated. So there's some big regional challenges, but as long as we keep functioning, providing good clean energy to our customers, and hit our 2035 goal of 100% clean energy, we're all going to be great and happy.
To confirm what you just said, Don, it took me 10 years to convince the city of Oceanside to get what we are now right now. Not the credit is not mine. But it got 10 years, and I said, you know what? I'm going to hit the retirement. Right after I hit the retirement, it happened.
Excuse me, Chair Warden, can we
Yes.
ask committee members to speak into their microphones for purposes of the broadcast, please?
Okay, could you hear Don and could you hear Mo? You can
We could hear
summarize if you-
Dawn. We could hear Dawn, but
Mo was saying he basically agreed that we've taken off very quickly, and it took him 10 years, but he didn't personally take the credit for it for Oceanside to get on board. And speaking for myself, I know it seems to me like about a week and a half ago that Barbara and I and people from Solana Beach and Carlsbad sat down and said, we have this dream to create a CCA locally. And wow, aren't we excited to have 3 small cities that are willing to do it? And now here we are just a few years later, and we're what, the 6th or the 9th largest in the state or something? Pretty impressive. Yes. All right. Who else wants to? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how excited that I am to be part of Vista and that we're going to be online pretty soon, and that Vista had chose to go 100% as a city.
Yes.
And I was really happy about that. And I hear rumor that our school district will also go 100%.
Yes.
Great. I think
So-
Oceanside went 100% too, right?
I don't
No.
know.
The city?
No.
No? Did they go 50 and 75?
that's right.
So just thank you for, I'm really excited that we're part of this, and I'm excited to see it unfold in Vista and talk to people about it and get as many people and businesses. I actually had a business approach me and ask about the 100% option before Barbara gave a presentation when we finalized our rate structure. So I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun.
You are. And
So thank you.
Your excitement is contagious, which is good. And I would offer as both a citizen volunteer here and as an elected official, there are oftentimes people are much more comfortable to talk to a citizen volunteer who's a neighbor than they are to their elected officials. So an important part of our outreach is communicating with your neighbors and the people in your community and getting them on board. Yes, Paige.
I know we'll be doing outreach to Vista and Oceanside next year, but I just want to make sure that there's other venues that we can maybe be present at just as part of getting people to opt up to 100%. I mean, I'm thinking like Earth Days and things like that we can work with the cities to continue more outreach.
Yes, I think is the answer, and the board would be happy if we wanted to take that on. Other thoughts? The last item on our agenda then is, I think we kind of already talked about it, but let's make sure if there's other thoughts to discuss the structure of our community advisory committee and whether we wanted to make any changes. And I think we wanted to change the time from 2 to
Sure.
1. Yeah.
Yeah. Chair Warden, I actually have a presentation for this item.
Oh, great.
So I will share my screen. So just a bit of background with regards to this item that's before the Community Advisory Committee. As had been mentioned by our Vice Chair, Dr. Mosier, the Community Advisory Committee was formed when Clean Energy Alliance had just 3 city members. And so due to the limitation of having such a small committee, the board established that there would be 2 CAC members for each member agency, plus the alternate, and an alternate board member would serve as chair. So we had 7 members. Clean Energy Alliance has now grown to 7 members, which results in 14 active Community Advisory Committee members, plus the chairs, a 15-member Community Advisory Committee. At the time that we added the last 2 cities, the board did indicate a desire to look at the current structure and consider whether it should be downsized. And as was mentioned by Chair Warden, the board also discussed if there should be some policy with regards to the chair of the committee being different than the chair from a different city than the chair of the board. And specifically though, we're talking about the size. And so Chair Warden and I spoke to the board and said, let's give it a year and see how it goes with the 14 members and 1 chair, and then come back and have the board revisit this item. And so this item will be revisited in January. And so the purpose of meeting with this item before you is to gather input to provide to the board with regards to the structure. So an option the board might consider is similar to how our board is made up, which is there would be 1 primary Community Advisory Committee with an alternate, and the alternate would serve when the primary person is not available. But you may have other ideas or other options that you want the board to consider. So we're opening it up for to receive your input so that we can provide to the board when they consider whether or not they want to change the current structure.
Thank you, Barbara. Do you have a recommendation on that? Do you think the structure should be changed?
So I think that there are some have been some challenges with a 15-member board. And I think one of the biggest challenges is, with regards to keeping the meeting to 2 hours. If we have an item that has a presentation and then each member wants to speak for a minute, that's 15 minutes just to get 1 minute of input from each member. So that's a challenge. I think we've done a really good job at managing topics by breaking up into subcommittees. I think that has served us well. I don't know that we've had 1 meeting yet where all 15 members plus all staff have been in the same room, but if that ever happens, we would not have seating at the dais for everyone. But we meet every other month, and so in the 6 meetings this past year, I'm not sure we've had 1 meeting where everyone was in person at the same time.
Good comments. Let me ask our attorney, if we went to a primary and an alternate, would that change the quorum rules? Because if it changed the quorum rules, then it would change our ability to work in subcommittees, and that would be a problem for me, I think.
Well, it wouldn't change the rule. It would change the number of people required for a quorum, and it would also change your ad hoc committees as well.
So if we went to 7 primary and 7 alternates, the quorum would then be 4?
Right.
Because it would apply to 7. Okay, we could still work in subcommittees of 4 then.
No.
No?
3.
3, sorry. Yeah. All right, so further thoughts or discussion on this? Yes.
Yes, thank you. So I think the board was maybe more concerned with dysfunction, like Sandag.
Not to mention any.
So, not that I said that, but yeah, I said that. But so I think if you talk about the subcommittees and the fact that we can do that work because we have this many members, they would say yes, and then keep the structure the way it is. I mean, if they don't like our work product, then they would say go to 1 and an alternate. But unless we had 1 and an alternate and we could still keep these subcommittees, but it sounds like we couldn't.
Deborah.
I think the reality is we're still new And I wouldn't recommend at all going down to one and an alternate until everybody's on board. We get something moved and we have a work product, a real work product. And then I think you could consider, when we're not doing community engagement and we really know what we're going to do with underserved or EV, and we know how granting works when we are working at a project from this committee and how it translates into what the board does. Then I think the idea of a primary and an alternate is probably the absolute way to go. But in this development, as we are still development, I would not recommend it. I can tell you that even within the city representation, the voices, we're getting more voices of our community in the room just by having two. So, and we can't have three. So that would be my recommendation, is to stay until we have built out and then talk about what's the best methodology or process to be representative of our cities and provide that input, but not be so large that it's too hard to manage as a collective body.
Thank you. Don?
No, I just agree with what Deborah just said, that I think the subcommittee work is really important and it wouldn't work with just three people. So I think it's important to continue with the current structure and, re-examine this issue next year and maybe the year afterwards. But I think it's important to get all the new communities involved and have as many people doing outreach as possible until we're a more mature organization.
Ron?
Clarification. So in terms of the ad hoc committees, you can't have quorum forum in those committees. Can the alternates be members of those? That's the same thing.
No,
Okay.
if the board decided to restructure and change it to a 7-member committee with a primary and an alternate, the primary would be serving on any ad hoc committees that the committee established.
Okay. Thank you.
Mo?
Yeah, I would agree with Deborah and with Don, because I understand, again, correct me if I'm wrong, we as a subcommittee here, we're a liaison between our community and the board of directors.
Correct.
So the big city like Oceanside, imagine Roger will be in charge. It's a big city. We need to have two at least, because we gotta go and get enough info from our community and citywide, which is big, and bring it back to our community. So when it comes to outreach and do all that thing, then we need to have two people. Like say Oceanside have 4 school districts in there, Vista, Bonzo, Oceanside. Well, we imagine we gotta reach out to these people. So I would say 1 is not enough. That's Mo's opinion, but it doesn't matter.
Mo's opinion does matter. Other comments? Yes, Paige.
Elizabeth, do we have to have an odd number of members on this committee?
That's recommended.
Okay, I
But
was just
you
thinking
don't
that,
have- you
don't
don't
take
have
this
to-
personally, Dwight, but we could eliminate our chair and just have a chair within, that would pare it down 1, but I can see. why,
Yeah, there's various ways to do it. And I do want to correct something I said before. You could have, if you wanted to have your ad hoc subcommittees meet as full Brown Act subcommittees, standing committees, then you could have the alternates be on there. But if you want to keep them how you've been doing, which is not open meetings and agendized, then it would just be the primary members.
All right, thanks for clarifying that. I'm hearing, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with the others that I think there's so much work to be done in talking to the communities, passing information back and forth. We may need to expand this committee rather than contract it. So that would be
Yeah.
my comment.
I'm hearing consensus to keep the current structure at least through the next year. And I would note, while we're climbing to our 14-member thing, that's fairly recent, where it's pretty new. And Rick's right, the board was concerned about dysfunction. But since 99% of the work we do is at the subcommittee level, it's really not a concern for us. So you all comfortable with a consensus to, at least for the next year, we think the structure should stay the way that it is?
Yes.
Do we need a formal motion for that, Barbara? Do you think?
No.
No, I'm seeing unanimous consensus. All right, well, we may be at the end of the meeting then. Barbara, anything else we need to know?
Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your volunteerism, working to ensure successful launch in Escondido and San Marcos. It's been a pleasure serving you and being the CEO of Clean Energy Alliance, and I look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Well, thank you. Let me ask on that, Barbara. Do you know exactly when you'll be leaving? Will you be gone for our next meeting?
I don't know. So my role will change from CEO to a consultant, basically, and as long as the board and the new CEO desires to have me and needs to have me, I will continue to support. But as of now, I would expect that the new CEO, Greg Wade, and likely the new program managers will be on board and they will be joining you as well. So already they're going to have to flip a coin to see who gets to sit at the dais.
All right. Well, I think I speak for this whole committee when we say it's been really a pleasure working with you. We hope you're still around for our next meeting, but in case you're not, we have nothing but thank yous to say for you for getting us started. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Yes, Elizabeth.
Since this is the last meeting of the year, I just want to say it's been a pleasure to serve you this past year. I'm not going anywhere, but a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm not sure if I'll be back for your next meeting either, but I may come back and haunt you from the podium, even if I'm not the chair anymore, which did one final thing in structure. It's never been totally clear to me whether the chair, who's a board alternate, should be a voting member of this or a non-voting member.
According to the policy, the chair is a voting member.
Is a voting member.
You have an odd number, 14.
Yeah. Okay, I'm okay with that. And I think the board, when they set this up, we were all new and just wanted to have some connection between the board and the committee that was direct and regular so that the committee wasn't running off on its own, which I think we've proven we're not doing that. But I think that was the reason for not having the committee just pick their own chair and do their own thing. So I think we're done. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you all for coming and have a great end of the year. And we'll see you all next year. When is our next meeting?
That's pending board approval, but based on the recommendation of this committee, we're recommending it stay the same schedule, which would be the second Thursday in February, right? Oh, no, the first Thursday in February.
First Thursday in February, mark that tentatively on your calendar, and presumably the board on January 25th will adopt that schedule and we'll know for sure, right?
And we're recommending the time to start at 1 o'clock pending.
1 o'clock.
Pending availability of Oceanside City Council chambers and board approval.
And is it February 1st is a Thursday? Yeah, that's the one. So tentatively mark it. And I presume, Elizabeth, that since we're changing the date, we'd have to publish some kind of notice that we're changing our regular meeting time. So we would all get that. Well, it will be subject to board approval. We're asking the board to change it to 1 o'clock. I assume they will, but they might not. All right. Thanks, everybody. We are adjourned. We'll see you all next year.